Look, today we talking about Trump. We talking about culture wars. The South Star Classroom is back, ladies and gentlemen. You do not want to miss this conversation. Go. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the South Star Classroom. I am Charles, that's Omar, and that's David. It is so good to see you, brothers. And before we talk about all the latest and greatest and not so great in the news, why don't we check in with people, man, and see how things are going? I'm gonna start with Sir David over there first. How you doing, David? You're muted, but it's all good. You know, there you go. Still muted. It's all good, man. Don't worry about
Sir
it. There
David needs to ask Siri to unmute this.
Oh, it said that it's because his mic is not connected, man. Omar, how are you doing, brother? We'll come back to David as he gets set up.
Yeah, man. Sir David, man. I'm doing all right. We were catching up a little bit before the show. It's a crazy time, always is in the schools, but like all good things. We're talking about next year. We're gonna go from about 600 students this year to about 1,000 next year. We're talking about new transportation routes. We're talking about getting a phase 2 built out with a gym and some fields. EPLA, it's our first year with teams, and we've got championship teams already, David. We just won. We were second in state for flag football. We were second in the region for girls volleyball. Our high school boys just won the regionals. They're going to go on to state for soccer. Our flagship girls just won second in the region. Our middle school boys just won first place in the region. So when we talk about EPLA, we build, we lead. We're already leading, and it's our first year in sports. So it's an exciting time, man.
That's what's up, man. Let's see if we got David back.
David, you back or what?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. How are you?
All right, great. Good to be here. I had a little bit of a scramble there, but I'm here dealing with all the technology. I'm doing good. We start spring break today, so we have 2 weeks off for spring break. We got a little bit of travel planned.
Y'all get 2 weeks off for spring break?
We do. It's kind of nice. What else happened? Let's see. A lot's actually happened, but that's pretty much it. I'm excited about today's topics, and looking forward to getting into it.
That's what's up, man. I have had some of the weirdest weather. So let me just introduce you to Midwest weather. So yesterday it snowed. It snowed for like 15 minutes. Nothing stuck because it was like 40 something degrees. Then it got warmer to like 50 something. Today, earlier, we had 70-degree weather. Now we have thunderstorms, weather advisories, and a tornado watch through 10 p.m. So it's been very, very interesting. It went from being very sunny to very cloudy and gloomy to like almost being nighttime now. And I'm gonna get some nice little lightning coming through while I do the show. So
is there a chance of meatballs in there?
It may be. It is welcome to crazy Midwest beginning of spring. It is definitely not sure what it wants to be. But such is life. But there's a lot of other things that's not sure what they want to be. And one of those being former President Trump, who was just indicted on charges. And we talked about this in our group text around, this might not necessarily be an education issue. I think it does impact education, but it's such a large thing that's happening that we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about it a little bit. So, does anybody have any thoughts on that? We see that the former president was indicted around alleged hush money to one Stormy Daniels, and they are trying to get him on, things around that. What is you all's take?
I'll go first. I don't
Yeah,
have
man.
a huge take on it. I think two things for me. The first is, these things, like I explained this to my son yesterday, and he's 12. And I left out, I mean, I didn't fully disclose like what kind of films this person, Stormy Daniels made, but I think you got it. So, but it's like the first time, U.S. president this has ever happened. And so, I'm like, these are significant times. We'll see what's going to happen. There will be more, from different states for different crimes. But we've never seen this before, and it's interesting, and it's difficult to explain it to a young person, because our politicians are supposed to be our leaders. And they don't have to follow every law, but I mean, this guy's broken so many laws and just been very blatant and transparent about it. I think he's going to get what he has coming to him. And I think the flip side is, it's really hard to understand that there's still people that think that he's getting set up and he's getting railroaded. And it's something that Joe Biden is behind, or the Democrats. When in reality, that's how government works, right? This is how government works. There are laws. Nobody is immune from the laws. And another little interesting tidbit that came out of this, which obviously is feeding into the larger conversation we're going to have about culture wars, is so this is politics. This is poli-sci. This is educational. What did DeSantis say? He said that he was not, and they would not use any resources from the state of Florida to help the state of New York to arrest Trump. So they're like, you're on your own, I guess, even though the two of them have beef.
Well, I mean, even with the beef, and I'm going to go to Omar, I mean, it was a lot of backhandedness in there from DeSantis. I actually would think that it would be the Republicans that, if anybody was controlling and pushing that, it would be somebody in the Republican Party kind of pushing to get him out of the way, because he is what, in the national poll so far, people think it's closer than what it is. He is far and ahead the Republican favorite for the nomination, with DeSantis. He's kind of doubled DeSantis from the last thing I checked, but DeSantis is clearly the number 2 candidate. So I wouldn't be surprised. But DeSantis said that talk with DeSantis was just a little funny to me, man. I think they really do got beef. But Omar is our political guy who is excited to discuss this. So I'm really interested in your take.
Yeah, man. I've got 3 basic takes. The first is like, what the hell is happening? So for our audience, and they're like, oh yeah, like,
yeah,
he paid this hush money. And like, so what happened is that President Trump, former President Trump, had an affair with a porn star, Stormy Daniels. Now, all right, like, not a good thing at all, considering the fact that he was having this affair as his wife was having a newborn child. So the ethical component of it is one thing, right, which is like shady. But the legal component is that you paid her money and silenced her testimony during a presidential election when people were actually like trying to uncover like incredibly important information. So to cover up necessary information in an election is already a huge issue, but there's a lot of other legal implications for paying what, quote, hush money is all about, because there was some nefarious things going on. So from a legal standpoint, can you do this? No. That's the first hot take, is that this guy clearly did a criminal act. My second hot take is that people are wondering, well, can this man still run for presidency even if he goes to jail? And the answer is yes. There's nothing to bar him from winning a presidency while he's in jail. We've never seen anything quite like it. But now here's my hot take on this. If you put him in jail, or you really exercise this component, this is going to work backwards of how you think it's going to go. Meaning that you're going to make him a martyr, and he's probably going to use this to propel himself to win the presidency. because the people on the Republican side that are strong supporters of him, as you all said, think that this is a conspiracy, that they're using this against him so that he can't win. And it's only going to help his presidential candidacy. For you all, like, how could an indictment help a man? This is politics at its absolute finest. It will help him versus hurt him. And this will far and away propel him into the Republican nomination and could create like a whole martyr / you see, they're just coming after me syndrome, which may help his presidential bid. The fun part, yeah, exactly, Toya. No, this is only going to help him, not hurt him. And that's politics, because that's the crazy irony of this thing, is that politics don't care about the law, it cares about the showmanship. And when people gain this image that he is this underdog and that the deep state is trying to put him in jail to get rid of him, is only going to embolden, it's only going to empower the Republican side and his supporters, and create that kind of emotional turmoil. There's a great book called The Political Brain. I highly recommend everyone reads it. And the overall ideology is that people make decisions not logically, but emotionally when it comes to politics. It's all emotion. And this is the kind of thing that embroils emotions. The third very quick hot take. Anyone remember Jeb Bush? Dr. Cole, do you remember Jeb Bush?
I do, like, very much so.
Jeb Bush with an exclamation mark. This cat was the front runner. He was the front runner in 2016. It was him versus Hillary, and it was going to be a battle. And then, dude, like, this guy got his ass whooped by Trump and by several other Republican nominees. The point I'm trying to make, most people forget about all this shit. The point I'm trying to make is that the elections in 2024, it is March 2023. People love to make speculations on who the front runners are and who the second place cats are and who's going to like come in and win. And they're all wrong. It's all just news fodder, right? It's all just to get you like gripped into the news of the election. Like in 1992, Gary Hart and Paul Tsongas were supposed to win that election. And Clinton came in from behind out of nowhere and beat the living tar out of every candidate in that election. Jeb Bush was supposed to win 2016. What I'm saying is that we can talk all we want about front runners right now, but this indictment is only the kind of thing that will help Trump stay in the media for free, destroy all of his opponents. And Ron DeSantis is like, will be an afterthought. People will be like, oh my God, this guy's going to win the nomination. This guy's going to be the front runner. You never know in 2024 who the front runner is going to be. So those are hot takes early,
right, but this part matters because this is where you raise money. So, you know, this is like one of those things. I will say this. I actually really don't care. Like, I just am. There's just so much other things happening. Like, I'm more concerned with 2 major banks closing. I'm more concerned with Russia has divested from the dollar a while ago when they were doing the annexation of Crimea, but China is now stepping out of that as well. I think those are actually geopolitical issues that will actually impact everyday people. But I do want to say, because Omar, I think you did a really good job, but I want to make sure we get really clear on the facts, because you said, you know, because he was trying to hush Stormy Daniels. The law don't care nothing about Stormy Daniels. This is not about her. Like, it's about the money, and it's basically a tax issue, right? So what, just so people out there that are watching, so you know exactly what's happening, is that according to court filings, when Cohen faced federal charges, Trump org executives authorized payments of him totaling $420,000 to cover his original $130,000 payment and tax liabilities and reward him with a bonus. Hush money payments are not illegal. Ahead of the indictment, prosecutors were weighing whether to charge Trump with falsifying the business records of the Trump Organization for how it reflected the reimbursement of the payment to Cohen, who said that he advanced the money to Daniels. Falsifying business records is a misdemeanor. So this is why some people are a little outraged, Democrats and Republicans alike, because what they're saying is, you're about to make this major spectacle on this man who loves spectacle, who will be able to use this as a rally cry and say I'm being unfairly targeted when this is a misdemeanor in New York. And I think that it's just another, another hit. But you've had this dude on a bunch of stuff. You've tried to tie him to like federal, like, crazy things, and you haven't been able to do it. Going for a misdemeanor and trying to trump it up, no pun intended. I think a lot of people are like, this is optics. But again, it's one of those things where a lot of people don't like Trump. I'm not a Trump fan myself. I don't care. But one thing, as somebody who wanted to be a law student who did not go that way and then ended up doing politics, I do feel strongly about this in politics. Whatever we do on one side, they can do on the other. So, like, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And the reason why I just say that is whether it's extending the courts, whether it is doing things that kind of work in our favor now, there will come a time when the rabbit got the gun, and then it's going to be a problem. But this is in the news. I think that dude is a master of news manipulation and will find a way to rally this. And we will see who's going to be the front runner when time comes. I am a little worried about Biden. I'm gonna be real with you. I do not think that people are as enthused about Mr. Biden this go round. But that would be another political show if we ever got there. I mean, we can stay here if we want and talk about it and debate about it. But I do think that it dovetails into our larger topic that might take us the rest of the way, David. And that's the culture wars. And so, you had named the culture wars early on when we were talking. I went and published something on it, but you want to set up the culture wars conversation for us, and then Omar, you can jump right in and have at it.
Yeah, let's do it. Before we move on, though, just looking something up. So there's like 30 or 40 charges that are included in this indictment against Trump. Mm-hmm. And there are felonies, Class C felonies that are in there. So it's not just misdemeanors. And there are a number of different charges. So I think it's a mixed bag. Yeah. But yeah, so that's happening right now. It looks like Tuesday is going to be the day when he's going to be picked up and processed. So, we'll get a Trump mugshot, whether you like him or not. And that might be his campaign poster, right?
I was just about to say, like, this is only going to help, but like, just to answer Toya's question, if he's indicted, he can still run for president. If he's arrested and in jail, he can still run for president. It's crazy. But
he about to be against it. He about to be the Tupac of presidential nominees, man. Like when Tupac shot those cops in Atlanta, it only went up.
He'll be running the West Wing in a jail cell on a burner phone, right? It's crazy.
What is happening in the world right now? Like,
so this is why like when I taught high school, I taught history, and it was an amazing time. It's always an amazing time to teach history because you're teaching about some basic core fundamentals, but whatever is happening in the world, like you pull that into your classroom, and that becomes the curriculum, right? You can take real world events and just, help students to understand the how, the what, the where, the why from different perspectives. It's quite fascinating. So I don't know what high school teachers are doing nowadays. There's too much for them to be covering, but this is definitely a big one, especially for like the U.S. history classes and the 12th grade government classes that we have in California. So let's switch gears a little bit and move to this unfortunate school shooting in Nashville that happened, still tied to the, if you look at what's happening with Trump and the way that narrative is being spun, it's a piece of the culture war debate, right? When we look at school shootings, it's very interesting to see how people talk about these things and how they're portrayed in the media. And so in Nashville, I believe it was last week, 6 people were killed, including the shooter, 3 students, 3 adults, and the shooter at a private school. I think it was a Christian school. So that happened. And what we get out of it now in 2023 is, I think the shooter was a trans person, right? We know that. And we know that in Tennessee, the gun laws are very lax. So people on one side, they run to like talking about gun control, the need for gun control and stronger gun laws. And then on the other side, now the narrative is, well, why don't we just give guns to teachers, right?
Mm-hmm.
That whole thing is like becoming recycled, and it's insane. And the reality is, like, there's some logic in the middle. One of the other pieces that's come out of this is, and this is more like on the fringe, if you really follow the news, they're saying there's this whole thing now. It's like trans shooters, right? That's what we have to be focused on. So it connects to the trans issue that is wrapped up in the culture wars, right? This is the next thing. Now trans people are like, taking up arms and shooting up people in schools, right? When in reality, I don't know if this is the first or second or third, but of the hundreds of school shootings we've had in the US, this is probably one of the handful of shooters that was a trans person. So there's no real, like, the data doesn't support that. You also, yep, I'm going to get there, Toya, for sure. The other thing is, school shootings are more likely to happen in states with relaxed gun laws. That's what the data says. School shootings, for the most part, are carried out by males, and most of them are white. So we have like very clear data on who's doing it. When it gets reported as a crime, which it is a crime, but we failed to like recognize what's happening underneath the surface, which is mental health and relaxed gun laws, right? I believe in the Second Amendment, but I also believe in common sense gun laws. And in these states where you can just go and pick up, a long gun or a rifle or a semi-automatic machine gun with, and modified, these are not things for like self-defense. These are killing machines. And so I'll say that, but I'll stop there. I think, it happened. It's tragic. I don't know if you saw the footage. Hundreds, maybe 1,000 young people took over the chambers in the capital of Tennessee yesterday or the day before, calling for for the government to take action. So these are like young 20-something, 30-somethings that are pressing their state government, and they took it over. And it was a beautiful thing to see. They didn't hurt any security guards. They didn't break any windows. They didn't do the things that happened on January 6th, but they got into the chambers and they shut it down, calling for better gun laws. So that's also tied to like youth activism and this next wave of, we always say, oh, that's the next generation that's going to change things. Well, it was good to see young people take to the streets. So we'll stop there. I want to get your thoughts on that. What you think about it, how you've experienced it being portrayed in the media.
You got it, O.
I mean, where does one start? I mean, The Onion, which is a satirical newspaper, every time that this happens, publishes the exact same headline, whereas like it's something in the tune of like, tragedy ensues again for world's wealthiest country that it could actually do something about this problem, but does nothing about this problem. And that's like a paraphrase, right? And it's a satirical newspaper, and it points out the fact that this is a country that is wealthy enough, smart enough, and capable enough to have systemic laws in place to stop this kind of shit from happening, right? And you keep hearing over and over again from gun advocates and from lawmakers who base their entire campaign on Second Amendment rights and individual rights and all this shit for their own glorification, for their own ability to garner office, spew a bunch of bullshit about what's going on in this country and the statistics and the laws. So then the answer is, let's put a gun in everybody's hand. Because I've heard this 1,000 times, especially in Texas, where I was a teacher, still am a certified teacher in the state of Texas. And they're like, Omar, we should just put a gun in your hand. And that way the good guys have the guns and you can, get into an all-out shootout with the bad guys and win. And look, there's enough of a problem with that statement to be like, has anyone of y'all ever been in a shootout? Any one of y'all? So like you're trying to tell me that all of a sudden like no innocent people are going to die in a shootout, that good people like me who've never been in a gunfight are all of a sudden going to understand how to start killing people in order to solve the problem. And people are like, it's not the guns that are the problem, it's not the people that are the problem, or it's always the same comment. Guns don't kill people, people kill people, right? And I'm like, yeah, look, I'm all for absolutely putting way more money into the kind of preventative care in helping to ensure that mentally unstable or like folks that have a background of harm or domestic violence don't get guns. But the problem is that the gun advocates and the gun people are saying, let's just get rid of registrations. Let's do open carry. So how the hell are you going to know who are the good people and who are the bad people? So this comes around again where you have a shooting and gun nuts are all about saying we should arm everybody. But then the problem with arming everybody is you're not only arming everybody, but you're making it ludicrously more difficult for the police to decipher who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. So I'm running around with a gun. Someone else is running around with a gun. Who are the cops to target? Like they're all of a sudden going to know that I'm the superintendent of schools. I'm also a brown and Arab man. Odds are they're going to just straight up shoot my ass. And this is what I'm saying about common sense gun laws in this country. And people are like, Omar, like it's a problem because there's so many guns. And I'm like, Canada has a shitload of guns, more in proportion to the people. Switzerland has a shitload of guns, more in proportion to the people. You know what they got that we don't? Fucking gun laws that make some sense to ensure that people go through background checks. There's a licensure process. There's a registration process. Imagine if we had more comprehensive ways of deciphering who could get guns and who couldn't. It's also like the commentary is always like, oh, it's these cities that have these restrictive gun laws and they're getting all, and like that's where these like gun shootings are happening. It's Chicago's laws. Like Illinois has some of the most stringent gun laws, but if you look at how those guns are coming into Illinois, they're not coming from purchasing in Illinois. They're coming from the very unrestricted states around it. And those states are flooding Illinois with guns. So all these arguments from the right about what the problems are bullshit. And it's all just to get away from the conversation of if we had more gun laws that could restrict the people who got them. I mean, look,
federal gun laws.
Federal gun laws. If Chris Rock said it best, he's like, if a bullet was $10,000, you may think twice. But you know what we have the technology to do? Putting fingerprints on every bullet. You have the technology to do that. Look, like you can have a microchip in a plant to talk to you and tell you when it needs watering. You can put identification markers on bullets. But the NRA and representatives who are getting money from the NRA, who are allowing these laws that are creating less restrictions and more restriction, will never allow it because they have something to gain from it. And that's insane to me. Because it's always the same narrative of absolute demonic selfishness of the NRA and all these representatives instead of the social good of the United States. They don't give a flying crap about us, about the social good of the United States. And Jon Stewart put it best. You'll allow all these things to happen because at the end of the day, you don't give a flying about kids and their welfare, because the number one way that kids are dying these days, guns.
And to young people or older people, politicians, people that feel like we can't work our way out of this. These things were not. This situation is man-made, woman-made, human-made, and we can totally reverse it. It wasn't. It's like we say. Or I say often, it was not created by God. So we can look to other examples where governments actually did the right thing, and they took action in 1996 in Scotland. The Dunblane massacre, right? Was a school shooting. 16 students were killed, 15 others injured. I'm not going to go into the details. That was in 1996 in Scotland. Well, you know what happened? Within the 2 years following that, both conservative and liberal, labor parties essentially ran through several reforms, which pretty much outlawed private ownership of most types of weapons. Within 2 years, it was done. They haven't had a school shooting since, right? So it's really not about like trying to figure out the right thing to do. I think it's going back to what Omar's saying. It's the entrenched interests of the gun lobby, period.
Yeah, I think it's I think the whole thing is, how do I say this, man? I think it's tough. I think I'm so used to these cycles now. And I know what the cycle is. I know what every argument on every side of it is. And they make sense depending on who's telling it, right? We are a left-leaning show. Well, some would say that we probably aren't, because we talk about charter schools in a positive way, and you can't keep a left card with that. But I think that, if a conservative's watching the show, they'd be like, those are some liberal brothers. The liberal argument is everything that you just said, Omar. It's like, you need better federal gun laws. We need to, make sure we're doing more stuff around SEL. We need to make sure that, that these places just don't have guns available. The conservative arguments are, to directly combat what you said, Omar, is like, how would the cops know who the bad guy is? Well, when you do gun laws, they tend to hurt the people that have guns legally as opposed to illegally. I saw a lot of guns growing up in Oakland. I promise you wasn't none of them legal. You know what I'm saying? And like, so I'm also, I also think that it depends on where you are. There are some places like in Kentucky where like everybody just has guns, and that community just feels comfortable with people having guns. And there are places in California where it's like, we hate this and we're not doing it. I think when we talk about these culture wars, I think people are so dug in to what they feel and what they think that nobody's hearing anybody. It's just an opportunity to megaphone what you think. And some people are going to say it more elegantly than other people on the left and the right. And that person's status is going to go up a little bit. And that other person's status is going to go up a little bit. And one of them's going to be at the top of CNN saying the liberal reason why we should get rid of guns. And somebody else is going to get a spotlight on Fox talking about why we need guns. I'm also a gun owner. My gun, I bought my gun in Illinois. I'm trained. I go and I do those things. And prayer is something that I never have to use. But every time I'm out and about, it is on me. It is with me. I live where I live, and I see certain things that are happening. I think that what is sucky about this is that these end up being political moments for people when other people are really hurting. But when is the best moment to bring this stuff up is right after it happens, right? It's a horrible, horrible catch-22. And I don't know, man. But I do think that it talks larger into the culture wars. But what I will say is this: we all know what the cycle is. I know what news stories are going to happen. I know what 2020 special is going to happen. I know what the NRA is going to put out. I know what Fox News is going to say. I know what MSNBC is going to say. And you know what else I know is that come Monday morning, ain't a damn thing going to be different. So I'm praying for you kids. You have to make the best decision for you based on where you are. And this is really sucky. And this is not surprising as to why homeschooling is growing the way that it's growing. Micro schools are growing the way that they're growing. It's just not surprising. And so I don't have a great answer either way. You know what I mean? But it's just, I do want to just acknowledge the loss of life. I just want to acknowledge that it's really sad and it really, really sucks. And I also, these are kids, man, and it's terrible. The same way it's terrible when a cop kills somebody, and the same way that it's terrible when people in my community kill each other. And I know there's reasons, and people can go into reasons and rationale, but they taught you about real numbers and absolute value in school. We can go to absolute value. And absolute value, it don't matter if the numbers are negative. It don't matter if it's positive. is how many spaces from zero is said number. And the spaces from zero in this is that loss of life, and that we're gonna continue to lose it, and we've been continuing to lose it. So God bless those families, and I'm incredibly sad and sorry for it. I don't know what's gonna happen, and I don't have a crystal ball to say it, but I do think we had some really good points, and I learned a lot just listening to David and Omar right there. So
you just did like a curriculum instructional trick there, Charles. You pulled a math concept into a social science kind of like political social context. It's called cross-disciplinary, stuff.
Indeed.
Nice job. Yeah.
I do have a comment really quick, man. Like, to bring math into this and public policy into this isn't just about like common sense gun laws, right? Watch the show with Jon Stewart on guns. It's fascinating. It's well researched. I want to give a lot of credit to that, because a lot of the stuff that I'm pulling.
Are you talking about The Problem Is or Old Daily Show?
The Problem Is, the one on Apple. It's extraordinarily well researched. Now, this didn't come from the show, but I'm crisscrossing it with something that did. 77% of mass shootings registered guns.
Mm-hmm.
So this isn't a fact that like all these kids are getting unregistered guns or illegal weaponry. 70% of all the mass shootings had legally registered firearms. The problem is, and this is coming from the show with Jon Stewart, the ATF, right? If you all don't know the ATF, it's a
alcohol, tobacco, and firearms.
Thank you very much, man. It's an organization that tracks the usage of all these things, but also could help if they were financed well in their registry of weapons to understand who owns what. The ATF has been so debilitated by past administrations and has been stripped of money left and right that they don't have the money to have the adequate people and resources to be able to do a database on guns. So it'll take them 2 weeks to have someone chime in and actually find who a gun owner is with the people and resources that they have. And this is a similar issue that we're having with the IRS. So Biden recently is pumping tons of money into the IRS because essentially rich people aren't paying their taxes. And because rich people are not paying their taxes and getting away with it, we're losing $1 trillion in revenue yearly from the top 6% of earners in this country, because the IRS is so backed up, because rich people have lawyers and it gets complicated, and there's not enough people in the IRS and there's not enough money in the IRS to get into these long-standing cases to get the money. If we funded the IRS, we'd have $1 trillion more revenue. If we were able to do that, we could use some of this revenue to fund the ATF and be able to have a registry of weapons and be able to track these people down. It's a matter of registering. It's a matter of finding out who they are, because essentially people are running around with guns anonymously. And mass shootings, as absolutely horrific as they are, also mask the inordinate amount of deaths caused by guns in this country that are legally registered, because people that shouldn't have guns, and people that got into domestic abuse have guns, and people that have like a history of mental illness have guns. And now states like Texas are allowing like fucking open carry of these weapons to boot, and saying like, we don't need any registration, we don't need no stinking badges. So what I'm saying is, ladies and gentlemen, it's not just about common sense gun laws, it's about funding the organizations to help ensure that we have a more safe public, because ultimately this is not going to solve itself by arming everybody in this country and having a shootout at the OK Corral. Just not.
Right. I want to go back to this Charles concept of absolute value, and an earlier comment that Toya made about the gun violence that is not covered in the media, that doesn't go viral, that doesn't draw the attention of the public. School shootings do. Anything that's essentially attached to like some of these like culture war things, like, hey, there was a drag show for families at some church in Little Rock, Arkansas, and that goes viral, right? For some reason. But you know, in urban cities and in suburban and rural, but I think in urban in particular, um, you know, in Oakland, California, where I spent a lot of time, um, on average, you have about 100 people a year losing their life to violence due to uh, guns. Right? In 2021, some years it's higher, some years it's lower, but in 2020, 109. In 2021, 134. You go back to like 1992, 175.
Yeah.
1995, 153. You know, I could keep 2006, 148.
I
These are human
promise you, the
beings.
majority of them is not legal guns.
Exactly. And the majority of them are black and brown that
Mhm.
are being killed. And so like there's this, you know, that like it's not happening in like one event, so you can't call it mass. But you know, if you look at the statistics over a year, it's still, you know, 100 plus people losing their lives to guns, but it doesn't have the same like pull or traction or like, wow, what do we actually do about that? Well, it's kind of the same. It's the same thing. It's you know, and you have very like progressive politicians in California and the Bay Area in particular that want to push for, you know, stricter gun laws. And I'm like, you know, Reno is only a 3 hour drive from the Bay
Right.
Area. You can you can pick up guns in Nevada and bring them right over, right? It's not, you know, these it's not about like sometimes politicians will make this point. It's not
My
going to
house is
solve the
20
issue.
minutes away from Indy, like 20 minutes.
Exactly.
And
Right.
I mean,
And so
and I bought, I mean, my pistol came from a local place and you got to do the
yeah,
stuff or whatever the case is, right? But I also had to
yeah,
get, I have a state license, right? Like so when you're a registered gun owner, you become part of like a larger registry. Like, so if I got in crazy trouble for something else, that could lead to my concealed carry license being taken away or whatnot, right? Like
yeah.
you also, like for instance, just so people know, if you're in Illinois and you want a gun card, you can't have a weed card, right? You can't have a, like you can't be like, I need medical marijuana and then go get like a gun card,
Does that
right? They
does that
cancel each
but
other out.
can you go to the store and buy like a 12 pack of Budweiser?
Well, you can go buy it, but you're not supposed to like they have very, very interesting laws. And
Yeah.
California had interesting laws, but here's the thing. It's still easier for me to go get, it's legal. I have a gun shop right down the street from my crib. Indiana's right there. But still being in Oakland, where it's much more difficult to get a legal gun, I can much easier get an illegal gun. I don't want to keep talking. I'm just saying it is not
Hypothetically speaking.
exact. It's the truth. And I mean, but
Yeah.
this is a tough topic. But I think what you all are pointing to, and we gotta let's just tell the truth and shame the devil, is that we act like we care about certain things. People do not. So when all those people are dying in Oakland or in Chicago, most of them people don't look. This is what the perception is. Most of them people don't look like me. That's them animals over there. Let them kill themselves. Let them kill each other. Some kids die. Like we act like we care about kids in this country. We don't. We don't. We can look at education. We can look at like healthcare. We can look at a lot of different things.
Yeah.
People are fawning that they care about stuff, but the only people that, but a lot of people don't. They just know the right things to say, and that's why these things are not changing. But as soon as
Yeah.
something happens in this country that a multitude of people and powerful people care about, that shit shifts. I tell you this as a crack kid that grew up surrounded by crack and how those people was treated. And now that we have this opioid crisis, I've never seen so much compassion. Like we actually have victims now, right? And so I know this part ended up taking a whole bunch of the joint, you know what I mean? But I just think that but I think it's an important conversation. And I think Omar is passionate about it. I think we all are in different ways, but I think Omar, I think you were especially just eloquent in what you were saying. I can tell that this is something that you actually care about. And you're in a state where it gets popping. Like you in a state where you can try to take an El Paso person's guns away if you want to. It's going to be some smoke in the city. And people believe in this. But all I'm saying is that people are in the point that I'm making about the culture wars is we're not shifting anybody. If you didn't want guns in schools and guns out there and all this stuff before, you still don't. And this strengthens your argument. If you are somebody that said it's crazy people out there that's feeling sad and they shooting up people, you damn right I'm never giving up my gun. I actually want to take my gun with me. all this is doing is making people dig in more. There is no crosstalk. There is no community. And I just think that we just one step closer to a damn civil war. I think the fact that there's so much stuff that's actually happening in this country that people just don't even know about. Like, they just like, it's like, yo, like, banks don't just get ran on every day. We had 2 happen in a week. Like, oh, like the fact that most of the time oil has been traded in the dollar. The reason why that's significant for people that may not have gone to college or not economy people, or whatever the case is, but whatever like currency you tend to trade like the most precious resources in, i.e. oil, it tends to keep that dollar strong. So even when the dollar was struggling, it depended on, you know, all this massive trading. But when China has said China and Russia are like, we are okay with moving away from the dollar, like these things do have these kind of implications, right? But we have such a terrible education system in this country that kids are not learning geopolitical processes that will impact them later on. They think that these things don't matter. And people that I love and that I care about know more about things that's going on a Housewives show than who's running for president, then what's happening with gun laws and what's happening in our economy. And I think that's why the South Star Classroom podcast is needed, because we have to start showing exactly what David said. These issues have to be brought into this classroom and become the curriculum so we can talk to people about it. And that was the article that I wrote when you all said we were going to do this Culture Wars joint, right? I wrote this article around we are playing more to people's fears and emotions than to their intellect. And it is showing. We are seeing the remnants of that. And dumb societies end up becoming wiped out societies. Fat societies that forget about its people and just are drunk on power, they don't last forever. Word to the Romans. So, hey, I'm loving the episode, though. I mean, it's sad and it's somber, but these are the type of conversations that we should be having. And how are we talking about this with kids in school? Not a teacher saying what they feel and putting an imprint on a student about what they think should happen. How are you building up a child's ability to logically process these things, have the emotional wherewithal, but also the logic to be able to like to be able to just process this information? And I don't think that I think we're going backwards as far as that part is concerned. That's just me, though. Hot take. Sorry. I know I didn't silence you. I know that I didn't leave people speechless. I'm not that good.
No.
I think Dave's just frozen. Oh, okay. Dave, you're just frozen. That's what that is.
Man.
No, I mean, look, I Charles, this goes into like the article that you wrote, and it goes into the blog that you recently posted, which is badass, which is the problem is a very pervasive issue that is rooted in the fact that when we're teaching our kids multiple choice and that's it, and we're not teaching our kids with an incredible amount of critical thought, a critical dissection of what's going on in the news, of critical dissection of history, being able to really like think through why are people telling me the things that they're telling me and what motivations do they have behind them. People are just going to get caught up in the rhetoric. And this gun thing is one of those things that is getting caught up in the rhetoric because it's very simple from the NRA. It's very simple from the right wing, and it's very simple for all these representatives to basically sit up here and create an ideology about they're taking away your guns, they're taking away your liberty, they're violating your Second Amendment rights. When in reality, if you start critically thinking about this, like, aren't you violating like the very tenets of this country, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness by getting shot in a school? And the critical thinking is a imperative component for Americans to be able to look through all the bullshit and all the rhetoric and really get to the root cause of an issue and say, hey, listen, like, you can talk all you want about the Second Amendment and you can talk all you want about like liberal ideologies. What we really need to do is start empowering people with the ability to see through bullshit and understand the motives people have. Because when you understand the motives, then you're able to apply thoughtful public policy that will make a difference in people's lives that isn't just about the self, but is about the overall well-being of the public. And it starts with with a very smart comment in your article about we've lost the ability in our schools to teach our kids how to think cognitively in terms of their creative problem solving, in terms of their critical thinking components, and be able, as a result, to then have, as you put it, agentic thought, having agency over their own lives. Because everyone's just caught up in some damn cultural war and everyone's just choosing sides, but no one's sitting here questioning, where the hell did this start? Where did this come from? How am I getting wrapped up into this rhetoric instead of calling out this rhetoric? And ultimately, the article is badass. So for our audience and our listeners, Dr. Cole just whipped this one up, but it's stuff that we've been talking about for forever on this show. And it ties so directly into our topics today about both Trump and these gun laws, which is that you get people whipped up into such a frenzy. You're not finding out the root issue and solving it. You're just creating people foaming at the mouth to go after one another instead of going after the problem. So I thought it was a hell of an article, Charles.
I appreciate it, man. I just saw that something was duplicated, and I know we're in the last 10 minutes, but I mean, a basic gist, if you want me to just run through it, and people, please check it out. I'll make sure that typo is fixed when I get a chance. But, I'll just run down the general points because I just had 3 major points. And this was just like, we got to shift the focus from heroes and villains to educational quality. And what I mean by that is everybody is vying to be liked. People care way more now about social currency than they do about actual currency or intellectual currency or financial currency. And in that, it's that I don't have to be a good person. I just need to look like a good person so I can condemn other people. And I think that that's really creating this false sense of community for these young people. I think we've been lying to these young people and putting on these facades that now they feel like they got to be perfect. And they're so judgmental early on because they ain't lived long enough. I remember I had this righteous indignation as a kid, and I had an uncle that just said, "Hey kid, just keep living. Just keep living." Basically what he was saying is, you just ain't lived long enough to really F up yet, but it's coming. And then once it does, and I did, and I have, and I continue to, and I try not to, right? But that you having mistakes and people still accepting you is one of the things that creates, your humility. So it's easy when you're 14 years old or 15 or 16 years old to be like, yo, this is what needs to be happening. But the world doesn't work that way. I think the other thing is we're combating sensationalism. Like everything has to be sensational. The news can't just be the news. It can't just give you the facts. It's different when it was 3 channels on TV and the news came on at 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and 7 in the morning. And then it turned into CNN had that. And now we got social media. So CNN had to fill up a 24-hour news cycle, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. But now with social media, everybody is filling up a 24-hour news cycle. And everybody's take has to be better than the last take. And there's no critical thinking because you just got to be first. You don't have to be right. You got to go viral. I think the other thing was cultivating thoughtful, nuanced scholars in a judgmental society. And I said something to this esteem earlier, right? You feel me? But it's just like we are just young people are doing what we taught them. We are teaching them. We have been teaching them. The way that we deal with issues is teaching them. The way Trump runs for president is teaching them. The way that people talk on Fox News and MSNBC collectively is teaching them. And it's teaching them a bunch of bullshit. It's not teaching them anything of substance. And I think that finally just addressing these inequities like you talked about, like you always talk about, both David and Omar, and prioritizing teacher training, because what I wrote was high quality, rigorous education should exist right alongside ensuring students are whole emotionally. It's not an either or. And I think that that's one of the things that we've done. It's like, why are you worried about them test scores when kids need to be whole and they need to feel good about themselves? It should be both.
Right.
It should be both. If your kids are in a school, and we said this when we were on when we did our live show together, like, if you are anywhere and a principal or a teacher is basically telling you they are choosing culture over academics or academics over culture, I am telling you to run. I am telling you that is terrible. I don't like using that term toxic because I feel like it's overused and it has no meaning anymore. None of this shit means anything anymore. And I just feel like, so I don't want to use that term, but if somebody's telling you that, you do not have your kids in the best possible environment to grow up to be full human beings. It's like, oh, they can either be good and dumb or smart and terrible. Like that's a terrible trade-off. So that's what these culture wars are doing. It is people who are able to glean and hold on to that. Go ahead, David. That was long-winded. My bad.
And when you talk about having a good environment for your child, like one of those important pieces is to like look at things like, you know, tying it back to what we're all about is, you know, I'll say it, test scores, right? Like how are the kids doing in the school? What do the gaps look like? What are the bright spots? That's an important piece of data. And we know what the data says, like nationally, around like Black students, brown students, low income, and special education kids. It's not good. And it's actually gotten worse. So tying this back into a much broader theme that has to do with the culture wars. Do you all watch the show, the Black Mirror? Seen that?
Mm-hmm. Which had to stop because real life they couldn't write shit better than what was happening in real life.
Yeah.
That's what the creator said. He said, what am I going to write?
They're like, just read the news. Okay. So this is like a Black Mirror episode. We have this thing happening right now where, you know, the right wing kind of scorched earth school choice movement, right? Moving more children into private schools where there's generally, I'd say, a lack of like academic accountability. I won't say accountability because if people show up, you get money, you can run your schools. But the academic accountability piece is definitely like not in place. It may be in some areas, but so there's that. And now on, you know, going, you know, playing into this like culture war narrative on the left wing, we have the left side, we have Jamal Brown, who's a Democrat, right? New York, who's, you know, talking about proposing to, you know, federally to wind down, if not completely terminate standardized testing. So, you know, talk about accountability. You have this like right side doing the same thing as the left side. And at the end of the day, like, it's just not going to be good for kids. They're doing it for two totally different reasons. I don't know if either of you saw that, but that's probably going to be, you know, a subject coming up pretty soon. Again, like there's nuance in this and we understand the nuance and the complexity. And on the show and in the work that we do, you know, we don't get caught up in the binary world of, well, it's either got to be this or this, because the truth is always somewhere in between. And when you can reveal the truth is essentially about the children and how the children are doing in our school systems, how our families doing, how our communities doing. But, you know, we're working our way through this like everybody else is. So I just thought that was relevant to this culture war piece, because it's coming. Like if everybody agrees that standardized testing is bad for different reasons, you know, that's we're definitely on our own.
Man. You want to give us a final thought, Omar?
Yeah, no, I mean we're basically out of time. I think that tying in Trump, these school shootings, critical thought, and a lot of what David just talked about all culminates once again, ladies and gentlemen, in like, what are we teaching in our schools? And like, I think Vita said it well, critical thinking leads to questioning authority. And that's not what America wants. I don't think it's anybody in the power structure that wants that, because then you're going to find out all the crazy shit that they're up to and how dumb their decisions are, how selfish they are, how illogical they are, how self-serving they are. And once people start finding out, they're going to be outraged. But one of the most fascinating things that happened to me was that I bitched and moaned a long time. And look, I'm a sports fanatic. I like live sports. I think it's wonderful. I think it's fun. But I always bitched and moaned that it's like, this is how you distract America. You play a bunch of, like, you get a but like the NFL, the NBA, like I love them, don't want them to go away, but this is how you distract America. Then all of a sudden COVID hits, right? And all these things kind of went away for a while, and now activism went through the roof. And this is the thing, like, Americans have to start realizing that you are being distracted on purpose, not being taught critical thinking on purpose, because if you actually knew what the hell was going on, not only would you be enraged, but you do something about it. And I think that oftentimes we talk and talk and talk, but we don't actually act. And look, like, I think it's not just time for action, but I think it's time that people get organized to make action, because now what I really have a problem with are all these celebrities going out there and calling themselves activists. Oh, I can't fucking stand it. These group of charlatan celebrities going out there and saying that they're developing organizations to actually do something about it. Then you look into these organizations and they're just shell companies. They don't exist. No one's answering those emails. No one's actually answering those phone calls. No money's being distributed to these so-called causes that, like, Selena Gomez's makeup line is actually working towards, or Diana Guerrero and her activism towards immigration is actually working for. She claims to be an activist about immigration. We're having an immigration crisis right here in El Paso, where Central Americans are running, literally running from bridge to bridge in order to get over into the Americas. This is a real issue, and where is she? All I'm saying is that I am sick and tired of all the talk, and I'm sick and tired of celebrities using these things as their cachet components in order to get more likes on Instagram. We as people need to see through all their bullshit, the bullshit of these politicians and these celebrities, and actually work towards solving these problems. And look, I love to talk on this show, but for those of us actually in it to win it, educating kids, activating the community, these are the people, we're the people that need to actually make a difference. Otherwise, it's all just talk and rhetoric, gentlemen.
Man, appreciate that. And Vita agreed with you. She said, I agree with Omar, folks. It's fake activists to get money out here. And I think some of them start with good intentions, and then you just, like, the grift just hits. It's part of the course.
The grift.
Before I go, David, I know you had your piece, but we didn't announce that was your final thought. So I just wanted to give you room if you had one.
I'm good. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, sounds good, man. I would just say, I did appreciate the show. There was a larger thing around, just the culture wars that we didn't fully get to, but I'll just read my conclusion to the blog, and hopefully you all can check it out and share it. And it will really help us the same way if you like and share and comment on this show. And we appreciate you. But here's what I wrote in conclusion. The answer is not to ban books or shy away from difficult conversations, which we did not do today, but rather to raise a generation that can not only comprehend challenging text and issues, but also make quality decisions for themselves. By focusing on building thoughtful, nuanced scholars who can navigate our increasingly judgmental and polarized society, we can work towards a brighter future for all students, which ultimately means for our society. How we support our students and our elders says a lot about who we are as a nation. And if you study the falls of civilization, there's always a process. I'm not trying to scare nobody or stoke no fears, but if you go and look at what those processes have been and where we are, you might find us on the wrong end of it. That's Omar. That's David. I am Charles, and we will see you all next time. Love to Jubilee, and happy birthday to her son. From everybody here, happy 12th birthday, and we hope that you all are enjoying. Peace.